Right people, we are less than a week away from WWDC. There are a lot of new tidbits, and so let's break down everything today. We begin with the hardware, or the lack thereof, because Mr Mark Gurman has said WWDC this year is going to be completely focused on the software side of things, with the only rumoured hardware release being postponed for now. What was the hardware release in question? Well, it was a new Apple TV. It was rumoured to come at a low price, around $99, and there was talk about a new built-in camera so that of course you can make FaceTime calls directly on your TV without having to use your iPhone. I don't really care about that though, if I'm being honest, because I have no friends to FaceTime anyways, but of course there would also be privacy concerns because we don't want Timothy peeking through that camera and watching us 24/7, but the lower price tag certainly did get me tingling because that's what truly stops the TV from being more popular like other set-top boxes, even though I do think the higher price is justified for the much smoother experience you get with tvOS. But hey, let's be honest, when people see a Fire Stick or a Chromecast for less, they're just gonna go with those instead because even if they're inferior products, they're good enough for the basics. They're not going to be gaming on their TV with Apple Arcade anytime soon. They're just going to be watching YouTube when they have some free time. And so they need to get the price down to attract more casual users. And the last model did get a price cut, of course. So clearly Apple's focused on making this affordable, which is surprising coming from the same company that sells $600 wheels. Anyways, if we don't get the new TV at WWDC like Gurman says, I think a September release makes sense considering we have seen older Apple TV models launch around that time frame. Moving on, let's actually get to the meat of WWDC, which are the software updates, and that begins with the settings application. Yes, not very exciting news, but bear with me guys. So according to Mark Gurman, we could see the settings app on iPhone and iPads and system settings on Macs get a new UI with a reorganized, cleaner layout that's simpler to navigate. Now I'm glad to hear this especially applies to the Mac because it is very much a mess right now in system settings, and so I'm hoping they consolidate the UI across the iPhone, Mac and iPad, and all three platforms share a similar settings page. Apple's also improving search in the settings app, which according to Gurman has been a major issue in the past, but I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember the last time I actually searched using the settings app. I guess in a way me not using it illustrates how bad it is, because if it was better maybe I'd be using it more often. But Gurman says that right now in iOS, searching for an option in settings often results in no results or the wrong result. So the example he gives us is the fact to search for charging optimization, a setting for the iPhone 15 Pro models, does not bring up the interface. That obviously needs to be addressed immediately because that's just plain broken. You know what else should be addressed immediately? Getting you to subscribe to the channel, of course. It's free and it'll bring you the latest about Apple right to your subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Saranbyte gang now. Now this hasn't been rumoured, but honestly the only settings related issue I want Apple to resolve are the camera settings. I hate the fact they're buried in the settings application instead of being easily accessible in the actual camera app like every other device. That's hands down the main thing I prefer on Android because it's so much easier changing camera settings on the fly instead of me having to fiddle around with the settings app on the iPhone. Anyways, instead of doing the logical thing, Gurman says we can instead expect changes to Spotlight throughout the whole operating system, as well as a new version of Siri that can now control individual features in specific apps. Now, is this really a fix for what I said? I'm not really sure. Why not just put the specific settings in the specific apps instead of having to mess around with Spotlight or Siri? I don't really know, but honestly, I don't care about the other apps, but camera settings need to be in the camera app. Is that really hard to understand? Now let's talk about iMessage, which is something only America cares about because the rest of the world uses something called WhatsApp. But anyways, what's being rumored is simply Apple catching up with everyone else. So for one, they're updating text effects. Obviously the ones right now are pretty cool, but you should now be able to animate individual words within a message. That's pretty nice. You should also be able to use these effects with the Android plebs, so no longer can you bully them for not having the confetti animation. They will also see this. And also because Apple's jumping on the AI hype train, there's also going to be a new auto-completion tool that I'm hoping is better than the current algorithm because it's pretty iffy right now in predicting what I'm actually going to say, I can't lie. There will also be smart replies for messages, as well as a generative retouch tool for photos. These features are both available already on Android, so they're kind of just copying their homework slyly, but hey, if it's a cool feature, by all means copy it. Moving on to the control center, Gurman says changes are coming. And that's it. Yes, the man has gone back to being super vague because he just says we can expect updates. Wow, that's unexpected, who knew? Now, thankfully for us, there have been other reports about the tiles being rearrangeable. Right now, you can only control the bottom parts of the control center, but if we get full customization, that would be awesome. You know what else is awesome? AI! It's being shoved down our throats whether we like it or not, and we've certainly heard a lot about iOS 18 being AI focused, but what is Apple actually using AI for? Well, we don't have to speculate any further because Apple Insider now gives us a good idea on some of the new features. So the first thing they mention are improved responses. Apparently there's going to be a new fancy smart response framework that takes into account things like people, companies, calendar events, locations, dates, and more. So basically this means Siri is no longer going to be entirely useless. Yay! Now some may be worried about the privacy aspect and Siri knowing more about you than your parents, but knowing Apple, there will be a heavy focus on this being secure and being done locally for the most part, so do not worry about that. Next is cross-media controls, so you should now be able to use Siri on one device to control playback on another. That would be a great ecosystem benefit. So for example, I could use my watch to control the TV via Siri. Now apparently this won't be ready immediately and it's going to be one of those features Apple says will be available later in the fall, so maybe we see this advertised alongside the new Apple Watch Series X and that new Apple TV that should launch in September. Anyways, there's also a catch-up feature which will allow you to request an overview of your recent notifications using Siri. This would actually be quite beneficial. And I know there is a similar feature called Notification Summary right now, but I'm guessing with the Siri integration, you could just ask to get a rundown of your notifications, and boom, there's a quick rundown read to you before you have to take out your phone. Yes, you could argue the watch already serves that purpose, since the Apple Watch is mainly for notifications, but remember, not everyone wants to be a nerd with a smartwatch on their wrist. There's some who wear fashionable watches, and also there are times where your hands are busy doing interesting things, and so you can only use your voice, and so I'll gladly take this feature. The next set of features are specific to some apps within iOS, and that begins with transcription and summarization in the Notes application, and this, as one expects, allows you to edit video, transcribe audio, and summarize text. Google has been offering a similar feature to this on Pixel for years, and it's very handy, so I'm glad Apple's bringing this over to iOS. I'm sure many students are going to find this very clutch. Now, if you're doing Maths 24/7 in the Notes application for whatever reason, there's also going to be support for proper mathematical notation, as well as integration with the Calculator app, which is pretty neat. So now the Notes app should be able to recognize math equations and come up with solutions and generate graphs automatically, essentially being a hack if you have maths homework. I'm sure many still out there use Photomath. I remember using that back in the day, and this kind of sounds similar to that, but of course instead of a photo, you have to write it out. There will also be mass keyboard predictions, similar to predictive text for regular messages, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this works, and I might even do some horrible maths equations for the first time in years, just to play around with this feature. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.